Streaming right now, guys. All right. We're not live, but we're streaming. And you're muted. I assume that's on purpose?
Can you hear me now when I'm using the microphone? All right.
And we are streaming right now on Facebook. And we are streaming on YouTube.
Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Blog Talk Radio.
All right, welcome everybody on Monday, the day before midterm elections here in the United States, for a special edition, I guess, of the Yaron Brook Show. And today I'm streaming live with the Ayn Rand meetup group in London. And you can see them, or you will be able to see them on the screen. If I do this, you can see them now. There they are. And we're going to be talking today. There they are. They're all waving. And I'm going to be joining them next week. We've got a bunch of events in London. It's going to be a very busy few days in England next week. And I'll be over there. But what we thought we'd do, again, on the day before the midterm election, is take the opportunity to talk about left versus rights. And we'll try to kind of analyze what that means and where I stand on it. And I'm sure that's not necessarily where all of you stand on it. I know there are lots of questions out there that were both taken in advance online, and we'll take some questions live. And of course, we've also always got Super Chat going. Always got Super Chat going over here. Now, let me warn you all that weather here in Puerto Rico has been so-so, which means I think the power is out right now and I'm running on a generator. It also means that internet, who knows? I think everything will be fine, but there is a risk that internet goes down. So that's just, as I've said before, just part of the risks involved in living in Puerto Rico. All right, so I'm going to hand it off to Razi. Razi's going to say a few words about the meetup group and events next week. And then I might say a few things, Razi, before we take questions about how I look at the whole left versus right question and issue. And then we will take it from there. Those of you on video will note that they're sitting in a nice pub. Some of them are eating food, drinking beer, drinking wine, living the life. All right, go ahead, Razi.
All right. So yeah, as you mentioned, you'll be here next week. It's about a 15-minute walk from here. So anybody who, hopefully you have tickets for this, but if you don't.
Stay with the mic close to your mouth, Razi. Keep them out,
so
otherwise you fade in and out. There you go. That's better.
So next week, Yaron will be here. He'll be doing an event with Brendan O'Neill from Spiked and with Kate Andrews from the IEA. The topic is, should government regulate Facebook, social media, and free speech? So you can get your tickets for that. You can find it on the meetup. And yeah, so Yaron, if you have questions, you can still ask them on slido.com, event code 4319. We have a few questions, so Yaron, you can make your open comments, and then I'll pass the mic over to Reda, who will ask.
And say what the event code was again, because I think you broke up just saying it.
It's 4319.
Okay, so 4319 on what was the site again?
It's slido.com, SLIDO.
Okay, slido.com. All right, yes. So, and you can go on there and ask questions. You can use the super chat to ask questions, and I don't know, Facebook does not seem to be cooperating in terms of seeing the comments. All right, there we go. Okay, so I just want to comment. We're going to be talking about left and right. That's how we titled the show today, and we're going to be talking about politics, obviously. Left and right is a political spectrum. So I want to say a little bit about how I view the spectrum, because I think there's differences among objectivists and how the whole left and right has been used. And I've seen people try to say, yes, there is such a thing as left and right, and The problem is that the people who identified as on the right are not really on the right, they're really leftists. So the neo-Nazis, the fascists, all of those types are actually leftists. And I'm not sure who's left on the right. If, I guess on the right are the traditional conservatives. I don't know what any of that means. I mean, to me, it's all giggly-boo or whatever you want to term it. To me, left and right has become basically meaningless. You've got, I use it as described in collectivists of the left, typically associated with the left. So the socialists, the nihilists of the left, the people who want significantly more government intervention in the economy, I consider them the collectivists of the left. And then I think there's collectivists of the right. And they tend to be those who want, in America, significant restrictions on immigration. They want intervention in the economy, but not for the sake of the poor, but for the sake of maybe certain businesses, or intervention in the economy for the sake of American jobs or British jobs, European jobs, whatever it happens to be. They are conservative when it comes to religion. They're the collectivists of the right. And I think there has to be a separate dimension, which is a dimension of individualism. And certainly there are people who associate with the right and the left who are more individualistic than their brethren. And I would say they are the better guys, the good guys within the political spectrum. There are not many of them. There are a few here and there. But I would put them on the spectrum of individualism. They're more individualist. And really, everybody today in the political, what is Donald Trump? Is he a leftist? Is he a rightist? Well, everybody views him on the right. Fine, he's on the right. But what does that mean? He's still a collectivist. So he's a collectivist of the right. So to me, the spectrum is collectivism versus individualism. And left and right are just convenient ways in which to describe the current political map. But I think objectivism, to the extent I speak for some objectivists, we are not on that spectrum. We are neither left nor right nor center. You think, oh, we should be, some people associate with the center. We do not associate with the center. We are individualists, which is off this spectrum. It's not in the spectrum. And even the spectrum as it is very murky. What is Merkel? Right? Is she a leftist or rightist? Well, she comes from a center-right party, but on immigration, she's a left, or what we typically associate with left. But on economics, I don't know where she is. She's kind of on the right a little, but she's clearly a collectivist. She's not an individualist. So she's, one of the bad guys in the big picture. So I guess the question is left or right, who's better? Do we prefer the collectivist of the left or the collectivist of the right? And the easy answer to that is neither. We prefer individualists. But so in the short run, since there are no individualists in politics, do we prefer the collectivist of the left and the collectivist of the right? And my view is, I don't know. They're both going to screw us. They're both going to destroy the country. They're both going to destroy the world. I think in different periods, you might want a different one of them in charge. It depends who is in the leadership position in their respective political parties. I think it depends on what are the political issues that are most urgent at any given point in time. But generally, I'd say this, and I know everything I'm going to say today, I'm going to get in trouble with objectivists, and the number of my subscribers on YouTube will drop. But I'm a big supporter of divided government. I am a big supporter of creating gridlock and not allowing much to happen. I liked the Clinton years where Bill Clinton, a Democrat, was president and the Republicans controlled the House and the Senate. I don't think Obama did much damage in the last 6 years because the Republicans controlled the House and the Senate. If you look at history, the worst combination of all is Democrats across the board. The second worst combination of all is Republicans across the board. And government spending in the US right now is a good illustration of that. So I don't have strong party preferences when it comes to these things. Generally, I would prefer there to be divided government, that neither party get too much, that neither party do too much, and that we buy as much time as possible for the individualists to rise up, for the individualists to gain more political power in the US, in Europe, wherever it happens to be. So, and I think the best we can do is to buy time. And part of that is voting for the lesser of two evils. But as the last election showed, it's very, very complex and very difficult to evaluate the lesser of two evils. The other thing I would note and is that when choosing between two evils, and I consider the left and the right two evils, it's not right, and I said this during the election about Trump and Hillary, it's not right to make a list of all the issues and see where they fall on each issue, and then plus minuses, and then add them all up, and those that has the most pluses wins. It's much more complicated than that. It's much more, you have to think much more long-term about that. It could be that Donald Trump, because of some of the things he's done, is going to make the economy fantastic, and the economy in the US is going to be great. But if in the long run, he is setting us up or moving us more towards the dictatorship and authoritarianism that did Hillary Clinton, then it doesn't matter. Then I got a few more GDP points, but I'm going to fall off the cliff faster, right? So one has to take a holistic and long-term view in terms of any particular candidate or any political particular party in terms of the impact, not just on economics, but on the culture and on the political culture. And I think one of the big issues I have with Donald Trump is the impact he's had on the political culture in the United States, which I think we're gonna suffer from for decades to come, and it's gonna be an unmitigated disaster. Now, again, he isn't the first. This is a slow process, but he has taken another big leap in the wrong direction. So it's the cultural influences, it's the philosophical influences, it's the counter reaction. You know, we'll see what happens tomorrow. I don't expect Democrats to do that well, but at some point, could it be that because of Donald Trump, the Democrats sweep everything and then they dominate everything in the future? I don't know. But these are the kind of things you have to think about in a holistic perspective and a long-term perspective of what any particular election results in and who is so-called better. The better has to be long-term. There is no better short-term if there's a price to pay long-term. So generally, I hate them both. I think some are better short-term, some are better long-term. But it more depends on the particulars within the political parties, who is going to dominate, right? I mean, is the nihilistic part of the Democratic Party going to dominate, or is the centrist, the Bill Clinton part, which I think is centrist, corrupt, but centrist? Is the kind of right of center part of the Republican Party going to dominate? I don't know. I'm not even sure who that would be these days. Or will the nationalist or the far or the religious right, or who is it? Who is going to dominate? Not just who's president, because, for example, Trump is a complete secularist, but he is strongly impacted by the evangelicals because he owes them, because they made him president. So he owes them. So he is definitely supportive of the religious right and their agenda. Anyway, so I think it's very murky. I think it's very difficult. I think, and this is why I think it's legitimate to have disagreements. I find it bizarre that people call each other names because of how they voted in the last election. Or I find it bizarre that people think that there's clearly, unequivocally one objective answer and there's no possibility of disagreement. I think it's very legitimate to have disagreements. I think it was reflected, if any of you saw the debate between me and Leonard Peikoff about immigration. Leonard and I have very different assessments of the state of the world today. We have somewhat different assessments about the pace in which the culture is deteriorating and sinking. And that will dictate a different election policy, a different way to elect. And those are two rational individuals assessing the world as it is right now differently, because it's hard to make these assessments. They're complicated, they're complex, they're difficult. And what is going to tilt us into the complete negation of liberty and freedom, I don't think any of us knows. And I'll just add this. In the big picture and in the long run, I agree with Leonard Peikoff. I do not think the left can govern. I do not think the left can govern in a sustainable way. To the extent that the left is nihilistic, they cannot win, they cannot sustain victory, they cannot dominate a culture. Nihilism does not dominate a culture. Not for very long. The solution to nihilism is always some form of authoritarianism. So the real long-term enemy, the enemy, the people who will actually manifest a dictatorship in the United States are on the right. What Leonard calls the misintegration, whether in the name of religion or in the name of nationalism. That is an integrating factor, nationalism or religion. Whereas, do you guys does my screen go dark and light once in a while? Did it just do that? That's weird. All right. So it's the religious right or the nationalist right, which I think will win in the end. I don't think the left can win. It can win for a while. The victory of the left, the reason one has to fear the left winning in the short run, is that they accelerate the victory of the right in the long run. So I don't think you would got a Donald Trump without an Obama and without the left going so wacky to the left. Donald Trump is a response to the nihilism of the left. And the more the left becomes nihilistic and the more power they have, the worse the right will become and the more power the right will ultimately have. So I think it is the right that will be the ultimate authoritarian force, while the left is what lays the groundwork for the ascent of the right. So they are both forces of evil. They are both forces of collectivism. But in the long run, the only forces of collectivism that is sustainable is that of the right. It's that of some integrated, something people need something to believe in. It's either religion or it's the nation or it's the race or it's something they need to believe in that integrates their worldview. And people can't sustain nihilism. They can't hold it. It creates anxiety and stress, and it creates disintegration of the mind. And then it creates an emotionalist populace, an emotionalist culture, which is what we're seeing. And the people who will capitalize on an emotionalist culture are people who can with certainty declare that they have the answers in the name of X and rally the emotion around X, around God, around the nation, around race, around whatever, heterosexual males, I don't know, about whatever it happens to be, right? They will rally the forces around that. And that is the long-term enemy. That is what will ultimately be the nail in the coffin, will destroy Western civilization. The left will create the environment to make that possible. And in that sense, they're both enemies, and they're both enemies, constant enemies. And we should never, ever, ever, ever let our guard down with regard to either one. All right. Razi, you guys have questions over there?
Hi, Yaron.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us on your show.
Sure.
My question is...
Just introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Reda. My question is related to a comment you made earlier about buying ourselves more time. So Donald Trump has already appointed 2 Supreme Court justices. There are currently 2 justices over the age of 80. Now, considering that there's a chance he may appoint another 2 to replace them during his term, and that he's more likely to appoint justices who respect individual rights, wasn't he a better choice than Hillary Clinton, who may have potentially appointed 4 justices herself and made the courts left-leaning for a long time?
I don't know what you mean by justices who support individual rights. I don't consider any justice on the Supreme Court today as respecting individual rights, or I'll go one step further, knowing what the hell they are. I certainly don't think Donald Trump knows what individual rights are. I don't think Kavanaugh knows what individual rights are. I don't think Gorsuch, who's the most intellectual of it, maybe Thomas knows what individual rights are. So I think this court is more friendly to economic liberty. That's true. They're more friendly to property rights. They're more friendly to markets than previous courts, and maybe a court that Hillary would have appointed. This court would have never approved gay marriage. So they're not friendly to individual rights. This court is likely, particularly if he gets another 1 or 2 appointments, to overturn Roe versus Wade, not because it was argued badly, which I think it was, but because they don't believe a woman has a right to an abortion, which would create a real disaster for young women in vast parts of the United States of America. I think on many issues, including certain issues regarding free speech, I think this court has the potential to, and again, if he appoints 2 more, even more so, to do a lot of damage to individual rights in America. Now, again, if we just focus on the economy, and I know that's the temptation, is just to focus on economic issues, then yeah, this court is much better. I actually like a court that has a bit of balance, that is not all, quote, conservative, because I don't trust conservatives. They're collectivists. And Kavanaugh, I mean, I never liked Kavanaugh, put aside the sex stuff. I never liked Kavanaugh. He's a political animal. He's a partisan. He's a real member of the Republican Party. I don't want judges who are, ideological, who are not ideological, who are rather party people. I want judges who can think objectively about the situation in front of them. So I'm not as positive and enthusiastic as many people are about the Supreme Court of America under Trump. Now, granted, on many issues, this will be good. And I thought Gorsuch was a pretty good nomination. I'm not excited about Kavanaugh. And I think that it might turn out that it will turn out that Donald Trump is much better than Hillary Clinton probably would have been in terms of Supreme Court nominees. Remember that the Senate would probably stayed Republican. So they would have had to approve Hillary's nominations. She couldn't have nominated people from the wacky left. She would have had to approve relative centrists, people like Kennedy, who is leaving. I don't think it would have been as big of a disaster as many people think. But also, and on certain issues, as I said, I think it would have been a plus. But look, I also think that the Supreme Court, because of the way they rule, and I think all the branches of government slowly are becoming less and less important when the presidency is becoming more and more important. So the president now, the president wants to write executive orders, and Bush did this, and Obama did this, and Trump is following on, where he's legislating from the White House, which is not what the Founding Fathers intended. It was not the intent of separation of powers. And unfortunately, the Supreme Court has become more and more accepting of what Congress and the president want. That is more and more acknowledging of democracy and sympathetic to what's called the will of the people and what the people want. Again, not what the Founding Fathers intended at all. So I think the Supreme Court and Congress are far less important today than they were 20 years ago. And I think the presidency is far more important today than it was 20 years ago. And I think that's a sad state of affairs. And given the importance of the presidency, and given how much power the president has, and how much power the president seems to be able to assert, having Trump as president, creates huge problems.
Hi there, Yaron. Luke
And
here.
by the way, I didn't vote for Hillary. So it's not that I think Hillary would have been better. I just think, again, both are absolutely unmitigated disasters. And if Hillary would have been elected, I would have been after her from day one. And Trump's elected, and I'm after him from day one. And I think our job as outsiders, what I say will not change anybody, will not change who gets elected. Let's be clear, right? It has zero impact on who actually gets elected. So our job as political outsiders is to criticize whoever is in power, to criticize them viciously, while emphasizing what we believe in, which is individual rights. And luckily, both Hillary and Obama give us, and Trump all give us plenty of opportunity to emphasize how radically different we are than left and right, than anybody in politics today. And that has to be our duty, our responsibility, if we care about the future. Ooh, I said duty. I'm not supposed to say duty. I'm an objectivist. Go ahead.
Hi, Yaron. Luke here. Good to see you today. I was curious about what you think about the state of the left and the right in Britain in a kind of up-to-date modern context. Do you think one is worse than the other? Talking about the democratic parties that are in government or potentially could be in government, and also the extremes on either side.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think you guys have you guys have a much easier choice in many respects, right? So the left in Britain is socialist. I mean, unequivocally, they declare themselves a socialist. They promote explicitly socialist programs like nationalization. Nobody in America is calling for nationalizing anything, right? I mean, as bad as the left is in America, they're not that kind of socialist. Even the people who call themselves socialist, they want to redistribute more wealth. They want to regulate a little bit more, but they're not Jeremy Corbyn type socialists. Nobody who has the chance. I mean, Elizabeth Warren is probably the closest we have. Even Bernie Sanders. I mean, to him, what was socialism? Denmark? I mean, on the Economic Freedom Index, Denmark is not that far from the US and about the same place as the UK, maybe a little lower than the UK, but not that far. It's not real socialism in Denmark, and the state doesn't own the means of production. But Jeremy Corbyn really wants to nationalize stuff. I mean, he believes in old style British socialism from the 50s and 60s that destroyed Britain. He wants to make Britain poor again. That should be his campaign slogan. And your right is pretty lame. I mean, as collectivists go, I mean, they don't have a clue. They're not exactly, pushing towards more authoritarianism. They don't know what they want. They actually are. Your right is zero. Your right is nothing. It's a centrist party with no agenda, no ideology, nothing. And I'll take nothing over socialism any day. So they're not even pragmatists in the worst sense of the word, like Donald Trump. They're just drifting along. They've got a certain idea of what conservatism is, and they kind of drift along towards that. Sometimes they'll do bad things that move you towards a little bit more statism. Sometimes they'll move more towards a little bit more free markets. It depends on what side of the bed they woke up that morning, or who within the party has a greater voice on that particular time. But I don't see the Conservative Party in England as dangerous. They're too, I guess, weak, mild milquetoast to be dangerous. Whereas I do think the political right in America has become dangerous, potentially dangerous, but particularly because of their affiliation with religion and now with nationalism. Whereas none of that is on the right in England. I don't see it. I mean, even UKIP are pretty moderate when it comes to these kind of issues. I was going to say, I mean, look at Brexit, right? Like they had an opportunity to do something really interesting and exciting with Brexit, and it's going to be nothing. It's going to be zero. It's going to be, you're going to leave the European Union. You can have all the regulations you always had. You're not gonna have any advantages. I mean, maybe you'll cut a few free trade deals with some other countries in the world. You'll have so-called sovereignty, but you won't know what to do with it. the Conservative Party has no clue what to do with it. So, and they're going to kind of deal with Europe. We're going to keep all the regulations of the EU. So it'll turn out to be nothing. Actually, it'll turn out to be a negative when it could have been a great positive, because the Conservative Party doesn't know what they're doing. And they you know, it was, the Conservative Party is so principled and radical that when, after the Leave vote, they appointed as prime minister a state voter. I mean, how does that work, right? The country just voted to leave. So in order to manage the leave, you're going to appoint somebody who believes in staying. I mean, that's so stupid that only the British Conservative Party could do it, right? I mean, so so I would take stupid over evil any day. And you know, if Daniel Hannan was running, I would say go vote Conservative and be enthusiastic, but he's not, even though I think he's significantly flawed, but at least he has some ideas, and the ideas are generally in the right direction, and they would dramatically make a positive impact on the UK in the short and medium term. But the rest is just, you know, I would vote Conservative, but I couldn't get excited to vote Conservative. I guess there's a Liberal Party too, right? Liberals who aren't liberal.
There's a Liberal Democrat Party, but yeah,
they're now very liberal.
U.S. sense.
Yeah. Okay, next question.
The next question is from somebody who chose to remain anonymous. It's on crime. The left would, oh, that was Tom back. The left would prefer to rehabilitate than punish. Which approach is better for society? And I would also add a British element to it. Like, I think in the UK, there's a much stronger, you know, the opinion that criminals are victims of society is much stronger here than.
Yeah, I think that's generally true in Europe. It's not in the US. I mean, certainly punish. I mean, absolutely. The justice system is for punishment, not for rehabilitation. The primary focus, the primary of a judicial system should be about punishing the guilty. And if some people right for rehabilitation, then I have nothing against that, and making that possible within the prison system, I don't think is a bad thing. But the primary orientation through and through should be around punishment. And so I'm not sure what else, and I don't know in the U.S. While there's certainly elements in the left that are anti-punishment, I mean, leftist Democratic presidents have not moved the judicial system in the United States strongly against punishment. So there hasn't been. I mean, generally, left and right in the U.S. have made prison easier. And I mean, we put everybody in jail, and then we make jail time relatively easy. But in America, we put everybody in jail. Everything's a criminal act. We punish everybody, and it's horrible what's going on. And indeed, on this issue, for example, I'm actually sympathetic to the left in the U.S. I would like to see drugs legalized. I would like to see, if not drugs legalized, I would like to see penalties for people who trade and who sell and who consume drugs lowered dramatically. I'd like to see real reform in our prison systems where people are not sent to jail for ridiculous non-victim crimes. And again, I think a Republican Supreme Court is likely to make that very difficult. And I would like, I think the justice system in the United States is horrible right now in the way it treats everybody as a criminal. And there's a coalition both of left and right in the U.S. Congress to try to redo some of the kinds of things that are defined as crimes, and for jail time. And I'd love to see that pass, but it won't happen with Trump in office. And I don't know when it'll happen, but that to me is one of the biggest social problems in the United States today, is the sheer number of people in jail is horrific and a travesty. And again, we can focus just on the economics if we want, but the fact is that there are other cultural issues that are just as important. And if you happen to be one of those people that are sent for jail on something that used to be a slap on the wrist and a civil offense, then life is pretty harsh for you. Life is pretty harsh for you. All right. If nobody asks me about Trump derangement syndrome, please remind me to say something about Trump derangement syndrome, which supposedly I am inflicted with quite badly. Go ahead.
Hi, Yaron. It's Steve here.
Hi.
Yeah, my question is, so we hear often how we're now living in a post-truth world, and the Trump era is the post-truth era. So my question is Trump the right-wing, quote-unquote, response to the postmodern left?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Trump is postmodern in much of what he does, and he is post-truth. I actually think he's the first post-truth president, because the difference between him and other presidents was that even though everybody lied, and Obama lied all the time, people had a sense that truth mattered. There was the sense that it was a little embarrassing when you got caught lying, that lying was not a good thing, was not a positive thing. They did it, but it wasn't viewed as a positive. Trump doesn't care. And none of his supporters care. Nobody seems to care. He lies constantly, and it's like, so what? As Trump said, as long as I win, it doesn't matter what I say. And that's pragmatism to the nth degree, right? Nothing matters other than short-term victory, other than winning. So I absolutely think that Trump could have not been elected if not for the postmodern left. I think Trump is the right-wing response to postmodern left. He's the postmodern right. Reality doesn't matter to Trump. Truth doesn't matter to Trump. All that matters to Trump is that he wins. And he defines, by the way, what he means by winning. He gets to define. So that's a moving target constantly. And I don't think ultimately means anything. But as long as he can make an argument that he can win, then, I mean, look, let's talk about specific Trump lies, all right? Just recently, he announced, I saw this, he announced that there was going to be a middle-class tax cut before the midterm elections. I mean, nobody in Congress knew there was going to be a middle-class tax cut. And the midterm elections are tomorrow, and there has not been a middle-class tax cut. It was just a blatant lie to provide energy. He has said that the caravan is full of, I don't know, rapists and murderers and Islamists. There's no evidence of that. Zero evidence of that. But it doesn't matter. It's aimed to get people out to vote. The truth does not matter. He said after he was inaugurated as president that he had the largest crowd in history. He didn't. It was small. It was a small crowd. It was smaller than Obama's. Satellite images prove that it was smaller than Obama's. But he had a hissy fit for days, attacking the media for not announcing that this was the biggest ever. For those of you who want sources on all this, Google it, because it's the video of Donald Trump saying all these things is there. I'm not gonna give you footnotes with citations in a talk like this, but Google it. It's there. But those of you asking for that are not actually honest about it. What else? I mean, you could go on and on and on. The wall was supposed to be built by now, and Mexico was supposed to pay for it. Mexico's not going to pay for the wall. NAFTA was supposed to be a disaster, and we were going to get rid of NAFTA, and we were going to have. And then he said we'll have free trade, no tariffs with anybody. And you look at NAFTA 1.1, which is his new trade policy with Canada and Mexico, and he doesn't accept the name NAFTA, so he's refusing because he knows that if he uses the word NAFTA, then he'll be accused of not fulfilling his campaign promise. See, he calls it something else. But it's NAFTA. It's NAFTA 1.0. It's exactly the same as NAFTA. They jiggered a little things here. I mean, that's a factual. He lied completely about that. He lies about tariffs. He lies about trade constantly about what trade is. Now, maybe that's not lying. Maybe in that case, he is just, ignorant and stupid, which is, I think, the case when it comes to trade, or just manipulating. But if it's manipulating, it's lying. Anyway, I'm not going to go through the whole lies, because he lies more than any other president in history. He lies almost in every single interview, in most of his tweets turn out to be lies. There's something really special about the way about Trump's relationship with reality. He doesn't care what reality is. And he's unique in that sense. Did I answer the question? I can't even remember what the question was. Steve or whoever. Did I? No answer.
Sorry. Hello, you're on.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So you made it clear that you're no fan of the left or the right, and I'm not sure that you can vote from where you're living right now. But if you could, would you vote for a libertarian?
No, I wouldn't vote for libertarian. That was just a waste of a vote. And the Libertarian Party is so messed up and so screwed up that I don't think it's valuable to promote and to support that the Libertarian Party, the way it's structured today. It's also an anti-American party, and it's filled with anarchists who I believe are worse than leftists. And so I wouldn't. I would vote for the less of two evils, or not vote. Which is fine. I don't see a problem with not voting. I know some people do, but I don't see a problem when the alternative is so evil. Then you can not vote.
Hi, Yaron. This is Telly. I mean, following on from what you just said, when I had similar discussions, I'm like you. I go for the lesser of two evil approach. But I had some people, and some of them were objectivists, where said, no, Telly, go the other way. Just vote for the most evil. Find the most Marxist collectivists and vote for them. And their view is, let them destroy the economy. Let's let them destroy everything for 5 years. So then for the next 30, 40 years, people will remember them and vote for somebody, somebody centrist, to give us time as subjectivists to infiltrate the culture and change minds and save the world. What's your view on that?
I don't get it. I mean, are you watching what's going on in Venezuela? Do any of you want to live through what's going on in Venezuela? Do any of you want to be dumpster diving for food and eating your pets and zoo animals?
Yeah, we'll come to Puerto Rico for those years. Yeah, we'll vote for the Marxists, come to Puerto Rico, and then come back.
Yeah, I mean, but other people will have to suffer. Somebody's going to suffer. I don't believe it is ever right to say, let's destroy everything so we can rebuild it. I mean, it's a possibility if you're convinced that you can rebuild it, right? Like John Galt is, right? So in Atlas Shrugged, that's what happens. But it doesn't happen by voting for. It happens by default. It happens by going on strike. And that's a big difference. I don't support the bad guys. I might withdraw myself from society and let society crumble, but only if I have a place for me and the good guys to live well while it happens. And the other issue is, does anybody think that Venezuela, when it wakes up from this nightmare, is going to be a laissez-faire capitalist heaven? I mean, do you think that it's going to turn around and be wonderful? I mean, I don't. So, you might get the socialists coming into power, destroying the economy, and the response to that is a dictator who, in the name of religion, continues to destroy the country. And you might enter 100 years of a dark ages, and which I think is where we're heading anyway, but I'd rather it happen 100 years from now than tomorrow, right? So I don't see any value in accelerating the bad. Give us time so that when society falls off the cliff, we can then recover from it because we've educated so many people. So we have exposed so many people to good stuff that when the drop happens, they will say, there were those people who talked about Ayn Rand. There was those people who talked about capitalism or being self-interested. Like after the collapse in Atlas Shrugged, now we can, okay, now we'll follow them, or now we get it. But today, if the collapse happened today, what would people do? I mean, they'd make it worse. They wouldn't make it better. It's not like they'd say, yes, free markets. That's what we need. No, I mean, I would much rather the decline be slowly. And also, I think the decline is much slower today because of technology, because there's sectors in the economy that are relatively free and being left free. And I would much rather, and I think on many social issues, we are freer today than we've ever been in the past. If you're a woman, you're freer today than you were 80 years ago. If you're black, you're freer today than you were 50 years ago. If you're gay, you're freer today than you were 5 years ago. So I also think that this perception of the left only does damage. No, all of those issues were leftist issues that became mainstream because the left insisted on it, right? Women's rights, gay rights, and integration of blacks into society. And I think I think life is not that bad today, right? Life's pretty good. Life's pretty damn good, not pretty good, pretty damn good. You can do a lot with the life you have today. Why would I want to make my life worse right now? Because, I mean, that's a sacrifice for future generations too. I mean, even if it worked, I would be against it because I would be poorer in my lifetime. So, it's, what we have to do is buy time. And the way you buy time is you play the parties off of each other. You try to vote for the less of two evils. You fight it constantly while it's happening so that one day when people are ready for an alternative, you can offer them an alternative.
All right, so this is another anonymous question. Taxation is theft, but no party is even close to adopting a voluntary contribution platform on government revenue.
Say that
Should
again?
we not vote? Taxation is theft, but no party is even close to adopting a voluntary contribution platform on government revenue.
Yeah.
Should we not vote for the lower taxes party?
Okay, who is that?
Anonymous.
No, who is the lower taxes party? Republicans? So yeah, they can lower taxes, but by lowering taxes and spending through the roof, they have increased implicit tax rates in the future. And the consequence is debt is exploding, and taxes are going to be raised even more sometime in the future to pay for all the debt that the Republicans are bringing about right now. So who's the low tax party? A Republicans low tax party if debt is exploding? No, I don't see that. I don't see any of that. So taxes are theft. Generally, you want less taxes, but taxes is just taxes right now today are just one part of many, many ways in which government it violates our rights. And if by lowering taxes right now, government violates our rights more in the future, then what have we done, right? What have we done? We've done nothing. I don't think taxes are a big issue. I mean, I've said this many times. I don't think from an economic perspective, the area to focus on is taxes. The area to focus on economically is cutting government spending. That is the only thing that matters. Starve the government, cut regulations, cut everything, and cut government spending. And then you can cut taxes. But to cut taxes first, which every Republican in office always does, is complete BS.
Hi, Yaron.
Yep.
So what do you think about leftists and rightists in terms of are they entirely non-philosophical, or are they just philosophically misguided?
Well, that's a false alternative. Because misguided sounds innocent. I don't think any of these bastards are innocent.
Okay, so how about non-philosophical or philosophically ignorant?
So some of them are philosophically ignorant, and some of them have chosen an evil philosophy, and they bear full responsibility for their choice. So Trump, and again, many of them have not chosen it, have absorbed a philosophy. So Trump has absorbed and integrated pragmatism better than anybody I know. I mean, John Dewey and William James would be proud of Trump, right? So he is the ultimate pragmatist. Now, has he read Dewey and James? No, but he's absorbed that philosophy. But that is his philosophy. His philosophy is do what works in the short run. That's all he cares about. That's all that matters. Non-conceptual, non-conceptual, very, very concrete bound, very, very do what works right now. Elizabeth Warren is, she's chosen an evil philosophy. She is clearly kind of a Rawlsian with a little bit of Marx, with the, mixed in. So she's clearly an intellectual, influenced by the intellectuals of the left, and has a chosen kind of philosophy. And I think many on the right have chosen religion as their philosophy, and that shapes a lot of what they hold. So, I don't know. I think that most of them are not very intellectual. So most of them have just absorbed the ideas from the culture and have taken in the ideas that are most appealing to them. And some of them are more intellectual. Obama was more intellectual. In his I'm trying to think of a Republican who's more intellectual. Republicans tend generally to be less intellectual and to have absorbed more of stuff and go by religion, or by what's conservatives generally go by conserving what exists rather than really rethinking it. So, yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at some comments here. Yeah, so I don't think there's anything about Trump that is principled. It's all pragmatism. I don't think there's anything in the left that's principled, but some of them have adopted kind of the postmodernist, nihilistic philosophy that's evil. So, yeah.
Hi, Yaron. It's Reda here again. I'd like to read the definition of a Trump derangement syndrome, and I'd like to explain how that applies to you.
Yeah.
So Trump derangement syndrome is a mental condition in which a person has been driven effectively insane due to their hate of Donald Trump to the point they will abandon all logic and reason.
Well, there are those that have argued and are arguing right now on the YouTube chat vociferously that is exactly a good description of me. I think the very existence of the term Trump derangement symptom is a sign of the tribalism that is associated with supporting Trump. That is, the Trump tribalists cannot argue. They cannot actually present evidence. They cannot actually, present facts. So what they do in order to undercut the people who are criticizing Trump is to say they're mentally ill, right? And therefore they don't need a response. One does not respond to somebody who's insane. One does not respond to somebody who has lost touch with reality. So the Trumpites don't have to respond to those of us who are critical of Trump, because they just say, no, they're nuts. They have Trump derangement syndrome. There are no facts that would change their mind. right? All right, let me just say a few more things about what I said earlier. There are some Republicans who are quite intellectual. Ben Sass is quite intellectual, but his intellectuality is primarily driven by religion. Somebody in the chat here says Roy Moore, the Alabama senator, could quote Benjamin Franklin on the fly. Yeah, he was intellectual, evil through and through. And through in the sense that Roy Moore was a religionist, 100%, and an evil human being, but he could quote Ben Franklin, right? And many Republicans are like that. They could quote the Founding Fathers. They claim to support the Founding Fathers. So their intellectuality often is derived from their religiosity, rather than from a true intellectual, truly ideas. And again, to the extent that they are intellectual, usually their ideas are really bad. To the extent they are philosophical, their philosophy is very, very bad. I kind of respect Ben Sass because at least he's somewhat intellectual. At least he knows the Founding Fathers. Ben Sass can quote all these things, but again, it's Lenin's concept. They are integrated around a false idea, which is religion.
All right, we have another anonymous question. Will America benefit from a significant rise in immigration, or is it okay to have soldiers sent to the border to stop the caravans?
Well, again, it's kind of a false dichotomy, right? The caravan is small. The caravan is a few thousand people. More people attempt to cross the border than the caravan almost every day. So, to conflate the caravan with anything is absurd. And this is part of the damage that Trump does to our cognition is he makes trivialities important. He makes them a big deal. Compare the caravan to Islamic immigration into Europe in 2015, 2016, and you see what a joke it is. The caravan is 7,000 people, maybe by some estimates now 12,000 people. The immigration into Europe during those years was well over 1 million people. 1 million people showed up in Germany alone during those years. That is a massive difference in how much we should worry about it. Now, so if the people who came could not go on welfare, could not get welfare, then yeah, immigration would be a net positive to the United States. Particularly given that they can't vote either. At least they can't vote for a generation, for 25 years probably, given their status. So immigrants' effect on the economy is not disputed. Almost no economist believes that immigration hurts the economy. Indeed, by some estimates, if you open the borders all over the world, and put everything else aside, just economics, just focus on economics, right? If you open up all the borders in the world and allow free movement of labor, and you had flexible labor markets so people could actually compete for jobs, trillions of dollars would be gained almost instantaneously in terms of the rise of the productivity of labor. We would be significantly richer, all of us, just by lowering immigration barriers. So immigration as an economic force is a massively positive economic force. And, we can go through the economics of it. If I had a blackboard behind me, we could do that. But basically, even if it's low-skilled immigrants, low-skilled immigrants do not hurt an economy at all. They lower the cost of production in that economy. They free up capital for other uses. They free up capital for job creation. This is true of low skilled, medium skilled, high skilled. As long as immigrants are working, what does work mean? Work means the production of value. You're working for a business that's making a profit, producing value. If more people are working to produce value, more value is being produced, and wealth in society is increasing. And this is true on every, I mean, this idea that low-skill immigrants are different than high-skill immigrants, different than medium-skill. Now, I believe that if you had much easier immigration into the United States, most of the new immigrants into the United States would be high-skill immigrants. But Trump doesn't want that either. And Republicans don't want that. They want to restrict H-1B visas, which are visas for high-skill immigrants. So it's not that they are offended by low-skill immigrants, but low-skill immigrants does not burden anything. It creates demand. And again, the demand is, how's demand, what happens when you have increased demand? What happens when you have increased demand? You have increased supply. People go in to make money to build new homes. So you have massive new production, which again supplies jobs for the people who are building the homes for the new immigrants. And then the immigrants need furniture. So furniture manufacturers have to go into third shift in order to produce more furniture to furnish the homes of the new immigrants. And the new immigrants on the consumption side, they're spurring the economy. And the new immigrants is then working. So again, if they are actually working, increased demand does not increase prices if supply can match it. And there's no reason supply can't match the increased demand. If you've ever seen the United States is mostly empty. There's plenty of places to build new homes for immigrants if you wanted to. Again, immigration. Let's take an example. I mean, this is mind-boggling, right? This is mind-boggling. What was the quality of the immigrants who came to the United States in the 19th century? What is the quality of immigrants that came to the United States in the 19th century? Millions and millions of them, far more than are coming today as a percentage of the population, far more than came into Europe during the Muslim migration. What was the quality of these people? I don't want to insult anybody in the audience, but they were poor, ignorant Irish. They were Italians who couldn't do anything in Italy, couldn't survive in Italy, and got on boats. They were Jews from little shtetls. Today we think Jews are educated. Uneducated. All they knew how to do is farm, maybe trade a little bit. They were poor, ignorant. They weren't high-skilled labor. They were the lowest skilled labor you can imagine. Did they hurt the U.S. economy or did they help the U.S. economy? It's not even close. They made the U.S. economy flourish. They blew up the U.S. economy. It was a huge impact, positive impact on the U.S. economy. Take another example. Hong Kong. Hong Kong, as I've often told, 100 years ago, or whatever, was a fishing village. Today, 7.5 million people live there. Mostly immigrants. Did the immigrants to Hong Kong, were they rich entrepreneurs who started fancy big businesses? No, some of them were. A lot of Brits went to Hong Kong. But the numbers, the vast millions and millions of them, were poor immigrants from all over Asia who came there with no skill, zero skill. Now, I said zero skill, and yet they created businesses. They found jobs. They built up Hong Kong, and Hong Kong is far richer because it had immigrants than if it hadn't had immigrants. Now, people say, but what about welfare? I said before, in a world where the immigrants don't get welfare, right? I mean, listen to what I actually say. In a world where immigrants don't get welfare, I'd like to see a world where nobody gets welfare, then immigrants are net dramatic positive to the world. And you can show endless empirical examples, and you can show through economic theory why that is true. Now, somebody says, but that's a that's a fantasy world, but it isn't. It isn't. You could have an immigration policy that basically said you can only come to the United States if you already have a job. Somebody's already hired you. I don't think that would be that hard to do. I think millions of people would come to the US because a lot of Americans would like to hire immigrants. And I think that they wouldn't get welfare because they're coming into the United States to get a job, right? I think illegal immigration would go down dramatically because most illegal, an overwhelming majority of illegal immigrants want a job. So they would, instead of illegally crossing the border, they would go out and get a job first. So the whole idea that immigrants are bad for the economy is false. And the whole idea that you can't create a system that makes it impossible for them to get welfare is false. You can pass a bill that says immigrants don't get welfare, which the United States has passed. For 5 years, they can't get welfare. So I think illegal immigrants. There are plenty of ways to solve the problem without building walls and without demonizing immigrants. Now, illegal immigrants are not bad. I don't think illegal immigrants are bad for the economy. Illegal immigrants are actually a huge boost to the U.S. economy. I think they produce more than they consume in welfare. They can't get welfare. They're illegals. They benefit somewhat from schooling and other services, but they pay taxes. And they provide jobs that other people don't do, and they provide it cheaper. So again, we save money to invest in other things. So again, legal or illegal doesn't matter when it comes to economics. It doesn't matter as long as they work. The key is that they either start a business or work for somebody. And if they do, they're a net positive on the economy. And let me just say about the caravan, it's 7,000 people who are coming to request asylum. You can always not give them asylum. That's fine, right? What's the problem? You need 20,000 American troops on the border to do what? To do what? And this is a caravan that happens every year. What problems have been created by past caravans? Illegal immigration, they say, breeds crime and human trafficking. Really? Really? There's no evidence, no empirical evidence to suggest that any of that is true. Any of that is true. Human trafficking would happen whether you had legal or illegal immigration, wouldn't matter. Just like drug trafficking happens and it's unrelated to immigration. Drug dealers will find a way to bring drugs into the United States, whether you build a wall or not. In a country of rich people, you don't raise average income by introducing poor people. Not true. That's just not true. Now, average, sure, because the average gets lowered when you introduce poor people, but the rich people get richer faster when you introduce poor people, because the poor people are now willing to do work for less than the middle class people were doing for you before, and that increases your wealth. I mean, come on. I mean, this is what we need here is a basic class in economics. Oh, wait. Next.
Hi, Yaron. It's me again. So I've got a question about Jordan Peterson. I'm sure you love these. So it's the same question I asked to Greg Salmieri a few weeks ago. Is Jordan Peterson a misintegration or a disintegration? And could his ideas lead towards the authoritarianism that you talk about?
What did Greg say?
So Greg said a bit of both.
I was going to say exactly the same thing, and I'm not kidding. I mean, he's both, right? He definitely has these moments of what do you call it? Postmodernism. Well, what is God, and what perspective, and who's defining God, and how do we, he won't define it. He won't give any kind of integrated definition of things when it's convenient for him not to give an integrated definition of things. And he's kind of depends on your perspective. And he sounds like a postmodernist, a completely disintegrated postmodernist. And then on other things, he is very integrated. Now, is he, he's obviously got I don't think his system of thought is integrated. So again, I think it's a mixture. Parts of it are integrated, parts of it a complete mess. I don't think you can be Jungian and be integrated. I mean, Jung is kind of all over the place, is my sense. Is he dangerous? I mean, maybe. I don't think he is. I think he is revealing a need among people for integration, for a leader to tell them what to do, for somebody to tell them to stand straight and make their bed, and who knows what else. So I think he's revealing the fact that the world is ready for somebody more dangerous than him. I don't think he is creating that world. I think he's just making it evident to us. The number of people that watch him, that go after him, that follow him, that worship him, is staggering, and I think reveals that there's a whole generation that is desirous of ideas in a way. I mean, I know that they want ideas, but they want ideas that are consistent with the status quo, that don't shake things up too much, don't question God and everything, and where they're told what to do, where there's certain commandments that they get to follow. And the fact that there's so many people interested in that is what I think is interesting. I don't think Jordan himself is dangerous. Next question.
Hi, Yaron. So I'm not thinking about extremes of leftist or rightist, but I'm rather thinking about, say, Democrats and Republicans, or indeed the left and the right in England. Who do you think out of those has more to apologize for historically?
Say that again? The middle of the road, left and right, who has more to apologize historically?
Yes, I'd be interested to hear your views, particularly with regards to American politics.
The right.
In the 20th century.
The right, absolutely. And the main reason is that they have been the world's greatest cowards, that they have, in the name of the founding fathers, in the name of the founding principles of America, they have betrayed everything. The left's the left, but at least a long time ago, you would have expected people on the right who claim to support the founding fathers to be supportive of capitalism, to supportive of individual liberty, and they're not. So they have betrayed the values that they claim explicitly to hold. I mean, the right loves the founding fathers, and they stab them in the back. That to me is 1,000 times worse than somebody saying, I don't like the founding fathers, I want to move America away from the founding fathers, which is what the left or the progressives say. Who lets them do it? It's the right that won't stand up for individual rights, who won't fight for capitalism, won't fight for freedom, who won't fight for individualism. It's the right that capitulates to anything the left wants. It's the right that ultimately allows itself to morph into the left through collectivism. So, I mean, think about the administrations. Teddy Roosevelt, the Republican, was the first progressive, right? Wilson was a Democrat, granted. FDR was a Democrat. But once the Republicans got into power after FDR, Eisenhower, what did he do? Nothing. Did he reverse any of FDR's policies? Zero. So what are Republicans good for? Who betrayed the founders more? FDR, a known statist with a statist agenda, or Eisenhower, an American hero standing up for American values and the founding fathers and American greatness, who did nothing to pursue that greatness? Who is worse? Kennedy and Johnson establishing the American welfare state, or Nixon, who grew it dramatically and added to it a regulatory state? You know, people don't know, but the FDA, most of the environmental regulations were all passed under Nixon, a Republican. And then Republicans who cut taxes and then spend like there's no tomorrow, so the Democrats can then raise taxes after them. No, Republicans and I think Ayn Rand, Republicans, conservatives need to be condemned more because they had the pretense of standing for the founding fathers and they stabbed the founding fathers in the back and they blew it. So I'm not saying that should guide your vote but history, when judging the left and the right in America, will say the left was the standard left. The left was like every left. The right had an opportunity to be great. The right had an opportunity to keep America on the path of freedom and prosperity, freedom and individual rights and greatness. And the right betrayed its own ideas. And that's the great tragedy of America.
Hi, Yaron, it's Telly again. So I was trying to think of a question that nobody would have asked when I went downstairs to the bar to get a drink, and I think I've got one. One of my favorite quotes by Ayn Rand is the one where she said that in any compromise between good and evil, it is always evil that wins.
Yep.
So how do we reconcile that with what we were talking about before about voting for the lesser of two evils? And can you also talk about democracy in all of this, where everybody gets a vote? How big of a problem is democracy as well?
Well, I mean, democracy is the fundamental problem. It's in politics. It's a massive problem. It's that we allow voting to have such an important role in our lives. That is the problem, and that creates this populist politics, this emotionalist politics, where voting for president becomes so important. I mean, people split marriages, split friendships over this, because politics becomes all powerful and all encompassing. Because by democratic vote, you can change anything, you can do anything according to democracy. So democracy is a big part of the problem that we face. And given that that's a problem, no matter how you vote, bad stuff's going to happen. So I think Ayn Rand's right. I mean, unless you undo the whole system of democracy, we're going to have an impossible time. Things are only going to get worse culturally and politically. They can't get better. There's no force to make them better. And the vast numbers of people who actually do vote are not motivated by ideology. They're motivated by emotion or by, who they like. Well, that's emotion, or by pure economics or something like that, or one issue or whatever. But until we get voting to be less significant a part of the political landscape, I think it's going to be very, very hard for us to have an impact. And in the sense of a compromise, yes, I mean, the evil always wins when good compromises with it. The question is voting for the less of two evils a compromise? And I would say, no, you're faced with two evils. That's the reality. And you have three choices: not to vote or to vote for one of them. And it's not a good calculus to engage in, but it's completely appropriate to engage in that calculus of who's going to do the less damage. I don't think that is compromising with evil. When you're forced into a situation where every choice you make is a bad choice, that's not an issue of compromise with evil. It's a completely different issue morally. All right, let me take this super chat question. This is Annie is quoting Ayn Rand on judging politicians. The question you should answer is, will he protect freedom or destroy the last of it? Will he accelerate, delay, or stop march towards statism? And she asks, in a social democratic country, does this justify the least evil social democrat? Yeah, some of them are going to accelerate statism faster than others. So yes, I do think it justifies voting for the less of two evils. All right, any other questions? We're getting close to the end of this.
Yeah, so there's another anonymous question. Given the current position of the left and the right in the US, which one would be easier to fix?
Say that again?
Given the current position of the left and the right in the US, which one would be easier to fix?
I don't know. I don't think in terms of how you could fix either one of them. I mean, they're both rotten to the core. And I don't see what the possibility of fixing them is. I think what needs to happen is to abandon the left versus right spectrum completely and recognize that both Democrats and Republicans today are all statist conservative, statist collectivists, and to basically start a third party in the US. And I don't think it has to be a completely free market objectivist party, but just a party of people who are more oriented towards individualism, towards freedom. So what used to be called socially conservative and fiscally conservative and socially liberal. So people who respect individual rights, both in the social sphere and in the economic sphere, to some extent. So I don't know if there are enough people like that in America to vote for it. I suspect there probably are, but I think it's time to reject both the Democrats and the Republicans. I don't think you can fix them. I think you can fix some Democrats, and I think you can fix some Republicans. I think you can argue with some Democrats. I think you can argue with some Republicans. I think you've got an equal chance of converting people on the left of center as you do with people on the right of center. Probably a little bit more on the left because they have a greater respect for reason than people on the right. So I think in terms of converting to our cause, I think it's probably about equal, but probably a little bit more on the left.
Hi, my name is George. I have a question.
Okay. No, it's done.
Yeah, I have a question. Is it possible to have a non-collectivist political party, or the nature of a political party is automatically collective? And what we can do about it? Is it better not to vote at all? I know that you mentioned that is equally good not to vote, or you can vote with the least evil of them. But is it the nature of the political parties made everybody so collectivist, because you cannot see individualism when you have to do with parties. You have people, you have group of people, you have a movement, you have either this is a religion or this is a race. You have
I don't think that as soon as we get into groups, we become collectivists. I can think of a lot of groups I belong to in which we are individualists and where we fight for individualism. So what I would like to see is a political party that basically fights for the rights of the individual. And that's the platform, and that's the agenda of the political party, is to fight for the rights of individuals and to establish laws that protect the individual and his property. So I don't think there's a conflict between establishing a political party and between individualism. I also didn't say it was equal. It was equally right to not vote or to vote for. It depends on who is available. In my view, in the choice between Hillary and Trump, I thought that the best choice was none of the above. I know really smart, what's his name? Greg Salameri, who was with you a few weeks ago, voted for Hillary. I know other people who I respect who voted for Trump. You have to make the decision. I don't think I think there's a right or wrong, a right decision, a wrong decision, but you have to make the right and wrong decision, and you have to make it based on the facts and but not just based on a narrow view of this election, based on a view of politics, a view of the future, a view of the state of the world, and a deep understanding of each one of the candidates' virtues and vices. And then you have to make a rational decision about which one you think is the lesser of evils. My conclusion was it didn't matter. They were both so bad. But I can certainly understand people coming to different conclusions.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, and if nobody has a question, I'll ask another anonymous question. Given that they are both equally bad, isn't the most entertaining option the better one to choose?
I mean, sometimes It can be. But entertainment at the cost of what? Right. So, you know, I'm trying to think if I voted ever for entertainment value. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, look, I think the decision in America was done in the primaries. And, you know, you could have argued Trump was entertaining, but there were much better choices in the primaries than Donald Trump. Much better. And yet people chose him. And if they chose it for entertainment value, then hell, they're getting entertainment. But they're also getting, in my view, the destruction of what is America. And everything that America stands for is being destroyed under this president. Yes, on a concrete issue by issue, he's done good things. But as a presidency, he represents the destruction of what America is. He's destroying the presidency as an institution. And I can't think of anybody who could have done that, who could have done that. They would have been maybe worse on some specific issues. Maybe none of them would have moved the embassy to Jerusalem. But I don't judge based on concrete issues. Yeah, I'm being accused of Trump derangement syndrome again on YouTube. Because that's what people do when they don't have an argument against. They put stuff in all caps and they accuse you of having a mental disease. But you know, I think his attitude, his language, the way in which he relates to people, I think the tweets, the lying, the whole package is the worst we've ever seen in terms of the presidency and what it represents and what it symbolizes. And I think the consequences long-term for the United States are basically an accelerated path towards authoritarianism. I don't think Trump's crazy. I just think he's a moron, to put it technically. I mean, he's a brilliant marketer who will do anything to sell his product, and his product is him. His product is Trump. And he will do anything to sell the product. He is the ultimate pragmatist. And yeah, go ahead. Somebody have a question?
Yeah. So voting is an exercise of the use of the mind. And if you were going to choose the minimum age for voting, what would you choose?
I mean, I've said this recently that I don't think it's just an issue. I mean, age, I think 18 is reasonable, maybe 21. In America, you're not allowed to drink, but you can vote. I find that weird. In America, you can go to the army and fight for your country, but you can't drink, which again is weird. If the drinking age is 21, maybe the voting age should be 21. That would be really hard to change. But in a rational society, I think voting should be something you have to earn in some way. So I've suggested that in a what do you call it? In a voluntary taxation system, you couldn't vote unless you pay taxes. So you'd have to be making a living, in order to vote, right? Because you would have to be paying something. In a rational system, I think you would have to take a test. Knowledge of the basic principles of the US Constitution and system of government, separation of powers, just basic stuff. But you would have to understand the system of government into which you were voting. I think in a rational society, voting would be more limited than it is today, where it's taken to be the most important right that one can have. So I'm less concerned about age, more concerned about other issues relating to voting.
Hi again, Yaron. It's Steve.
Hey, Steve, I think we're going to make this the last question because we're at an hour and a half.
So following on from my earlier question, do you think that Trump is a better manifestation of postmodernism than the left, or a more accurate one?
No, Well, I don't know. No, because he's not intellectual. I mean, it's no manifestation. I mean, in the end of the day, he's a product of the left. I mean, Trump is the product of the left. He is the response to the left. But is he a better representation of postmodernism? No. I mean, I can imagine. I mean, I can imagine people being worse than him. I don't know. I don't know who that would be. I'd have to think about it, but I'm sure there are politicians that are worse in that they represent postmodernism better. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to rank how bad people are. When they're so bad, it's hard to rank them, who is worse and who is better, and so on. All right. So I don't know if I convinced anybody I don't have TDS, but probably reinforced people's view that I do have TDS. But by the way, I called Trump a moron an hour and a half into a discussion of why he's an awful president and an ignorant president, and one of the dumbest presidents in terms of economics that I've ever heard or seen. Right? No, he is the dumbest president on economic issues, no question. Maybe the dumbest politician ever on economic issues. And all you have to do is read his tweets on trade, and they are so mind-boggling, stupid and inconsistent and incoherent and just wrong, right? His view as the trade is a negative-sum game, that when we buy stuff from Canada, we lose. That is so infantile that I think moron is a good description of him. But unfortunately, moron gets him off the hook a little bit too much, because it makes him not as responsible as I think he is. By the way, moron was a term used by his own Secretary of State, somebody who interacted with him on a regular basis. So somebody who ran one of the largest corporations in the world, somebody who had vast experience all over the world with politicians, with business, an incredibly productive individual, and whose name slips my mind now, who ran Exxon. He's the one who said the term moron. And Trump gives plenty of evidence to suggest that he was right. So that's my view. You want to call it Trump derangement syndrome? So be it. I'll embrace the term. All right. Yeah.
All right. So next week when you're here, you'll be discussing social media and free speech with Brendan O'Neill and Kate Andrews. I'm sure Trump's tweets will come up at some point during the conversation. But yeah, for now, thanks for having us on.
Sure. And I'll also be speaking at Exeter University next week, a Tuesday. So anybody in that part of England, you're invited. Details should be up somewhere on Facebook. If they're not, then they should be up soon. I'm not doing anything else. And then, of course, there's the Ayn Rand lecture, which I encourage everybody to come to who's in the UK. It'll be on Wednesday, the 14th, I think it is, at Goldsmith Hall, sponsored by the Adam Smith Institute. And it'll have a fabulous speaker, Michael Kaufman, who is a real entrepreneur, innovator in the field of biomedicine, and going to give a fascinating talk, I think, about it. And for the rest of you Europeans, I'll be traveling around Europe for the following week, visiting, 5 or 6 different countries. So we've got public events in a number of different countries in Europe. So, watch.
All right. Thank you. See you next
week. Guys. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Don't forget to share. Don't forget to subscribe. And don't forget to support the Yaron Brook Show on Patreon, patreon.com/Yaron Brook Show. All right. See you all tomorrow. I think we're doing an episode of the Yaron and Amy Show. Bye, everybody.